So when we look at neurodivergence, we see that neurodivergent individuals are still disadvantaged. So neurodivergent individuals are more likely to be unable to achieve their educational potential, right? So they're more likely as well to be unemployed or to be incarcerated even, right? And these things are not due to neurodivergent individuals being less smart or less innately valuable. The difference really is driven in a large part by the mismatch between the neurodivergent neurotype and a neurotypical environment. For example, a neurotypical school environment or a neurotypical work setting. Today, I want to talk to you about a couple of things. I want to talk to you about the medical model. I want to talk to you about the neurodiversity movement. And then I want to spend a bit of time talking about a strengths-based model of neurodiversity that was developed by Lawrence Fung and Nancy Doyle, which is quite interesting, quite influential. So let's start with our current thinking, right? So our current thinking about conditions that fall under the neurodiversity umbrella is still very deficits heavy, right? So we often think about people with autism or people with ADHD through a lens where we really focus on things that they cannot do as well as people without autism or people without ADHD, for example. And there are many more conditions that fall under that neurodiversity umbrella, but I'll just use these conditions as an example. The neurodiversity movement goes a bit against this medical model and medical thinking. So in the neurodiversity movement, it really shows some similarities to different movements in terms of race, gender, etc., right? And it really focuses on a more balanced approach of limitations, so things that we can't do as well as others, and strengths, things that we might be able to do as well or better generally than other people, and specifically in the neurodiversity domain, right? So it talks about people with a different neurotype being able to not just do things, certain things worse, but also certain things better, right? Because that's often the complete picture that we need. The neurodiversity movement also views variations in brain functioning as normal and expected within a population. So the neurodiversity movement doesn't pathologize neurodiversity, right? But instead it says the population would be a normal curve distribution, and people who sit on the ends of that distribution might be the people that we consider as having a neurotype that's different from that of the norm, from that of the people who sit in the big belly of the normal curve distribution. And so one thing that's important related to what I said before is that the neurodiversity movement really implies that difference or being an outlier in some way really does not mean disease or deficit, right? It just means a different way of functioning. And like I said before, it really shows similarities to neurodiversity movement with movements in support of demographic diversity, such as the women's rights movement in the gender domain, the Black Lives Matter movement in terms of race, and the LGBTQI plus movement in terms of sexual orientation, gender, etc. And so today I want to talk to you primarily about a strengths-based model of neurodiversity and a specific strengths-based model. So as I said, Lawrence Fung, a professor, and Nancy Doyle, also a professor, they argue that to succeed at building a strengths-based model of neurodiversity, we need to incorporate different models, including medical, evolutionary, social, and policy models, to develop a multidimensional unifying theory of neurodiversity, right? So we need to basically draw on the strengths of theories from lots of different domains to really come up with a comprehensive, helpful theory of neurodiversity. And so to achieve this, both proposed the strengths-based model of neurodiversity, or the SBMN, strengths-based model of neurodiversity, which draws on 4 recent developments in psychology and psychiatry that acknowledge the challenges inherent in neurodiversity, but also emphasize its strengths. Like I said before, right? In general, in neurodiversity theories, that's the case. So first, the SBMN draws on Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. So what this means is that this model that Fung and Doyle propose really works from the presumption that there is not one unique, one best measure of intelligence. It's often the case in our current society. Often we think IQ best measures intelligence, but rather their theory proposes, their neurodiversity theory, strengths-based model of neurodiversity, proposes that there are multiple different types of intelligences, right? So one kind of type of intelligence might be the traditionally measured IQ, but then another type of intelligence could be EQ, right? The emotional type of intelligence. But other types of intelligence that are often researched are things like musical ability, artistic ability, the ability to acquire different languages, right? So there are really lots of different ways that we can think about intelligence and conceptualize intelligence. And so they really highlight that in their SBMN model. Second, the SBMN model draws on positive psychology, right? So that's a relatively more recent domain in psychology, which was designed to promote well-being, contentment, and satisfaction, right? So when we apply positive psychology to neurodiversity, we really emphasize the strengths inherent in neurodiverse conditions or in the neurodiverse way of being, right? And how these allow the attainment of personally relevant life goals and values. So positive psychology really emphasizes a balanced, strengths-oriented lifestyle that increases awareness of personal strengths, beliefs in one's abilities, and engagement in relationships, and enhance self-satisfaction through successful action, right? So first of all, we have those multiple types or multiple views of intelligence. Then we have positive psychology. We need to draw on that to really draw in research and focus on neurodivergent people's strengths and align their goals for their work, say in a psychology session, for example, with their goals, with their values, etc. So working towards meaningful goals for neurodivergent people. Third, the SBMN draws on positive psychiatry, right, which focuses on positive attributes, strengths, and protective factors. So it has some overlaps with positive psychology, understandably, but it's a bit different in the sense that it really highlights psychoeducation and also viewing the client as a collaborator in that health professional diet, right? And it really focuses as well on personal growth and well-being as well. So that's really important as a third pillar of that SBM model. And fourth, the SBMN model draws on Chickering's 7 factors of development, which describes the series of developmental stages that every individual goes through in their life. And we all need to progress through them one after the other in a way to develop optimally, right? And so the SBMN proposes that neurodiverse individuals are provided with opportunities and support to work through the appropriate developmental stages that are applicable in their life at the moment, right? And it also suggests that neurodiversity friendly environments are created and that health professionals are empowered to support these processes, right, for neurodivergent clients and consumers. So if you want to read more about this, I have the book over here that this model comes from. This is a very interesting book. So it's titled Neurodiversity from Phenomenology to Neurobiology and Enhancing Technologies. It's written by Lawrence Fung, one of the developers, authors of the SBMN. And I think overall, I'm a big fan of neurodiversity movement, neurodiversity grounded models and ways of working. It's a much more balanced approach than working, in my opinion, than working from a solely medical model approach. And this model of neurodiversity, the SBMN, is one clear, detailed model of how the neurodiversity movement components can be implemented in working with people with a different neurotype.